the perseverance of society. Taking sexual desires from the bounds of the family environment to society has weakened society's capacity for work and activity. Contrary to the opinion that the modest dress results in paralyzing half of the energy potential of the individuals of society, the lack of the modest dress and the gradual development of free relationships has caused the social force to fail. That which has caused the paralysis of women's power and that which has imprisoned her talents is the lack of the modest dress. In Islam, there is no question of the modest dress prohibiting a woman from participating in cultural, social, or economic activities. Islam neither says that a woman cannot leave her home, nor does it say that she cannot seek knowledge and learning. Rather, men and women must both learn and seek knowledge. There is no objection to women's economic activities in Islam. Islam has never wanted women to be useless and unoccupied. It has never desired that women bring up useless and indifferent children. The covering of the body, except for the face and hands, is not to prevent any kind of cultural or social or economic activity. That which paralyzes the working force is the corruption of the work environment by the element of seeking the satisfaction of sexual pleasures. If a boy and a girl study in a separate environment, or in one environment where the girl covers her body and wears no makeup, do they not study better? Do they not think better and listen to the words of the teacher better? Or is it better when a boy sits beside a girl who has on makeup and is wearing a short skirt which barely reaches her knees? Will men work better in an environment where the streets, offices, factories, etc. are continuously filled with women who are all wearing heavy makeup and not covered, or in an environment where these scenes do not exist? Any company or office that is serious about its work and endeavors to produce good products or services prevents these kinds of intermixings. If you do not believe this, check it out yourself. The truth is that the disgraceful lack of the modest dress in Iran, he is speaking before the victory of the Islamic Revolution, whereby we were even moving ahead of America, is a product of the corrupt Western capitalist societies. It is one of the results of the worship of money and the pursuance of sexual fulfillment that is prevalent in Western capitalism. It is one of the means they use to manipulate human society and stimulate them by this force to become consumers of their products. If an Iranian woman only wants to put on makeup for her legal husband, or only wants to get dressed up for gatherings with women, she will not be a consumer of Western products. She will not be obliged to unconsciously corrupt the morals of young boys and girls, to weaken them so that they are no longer active members of society, which is to the benefit of the exploiters. First lesson: reasons given for the modest dress. Our discourse will center around the Islamic modest dress. We will discuss the modest dress from three aspects, and I think that it is best if we divide it in this way. One discussion will be a philosophical and socio-historic one about why the modest dress appeared among people in general, because it is not particular to Islam. It existed before Islam among many of the ancient nations, and it was stronger in Sasanian Iran than in any other place. What reasons have been given for this? It is possible that some of these reasons may be correct in relation to some societies. In other words, are the causes given for the development of the modest dress true in some places? Then we have to see if the reasons they have given hold true for the modest dress in Islam as well, or whether or not Islam has other reasons. We will deduce the Islamic point of view from Islam itself. The second discussion relates to the problems which a person may find with the modest dress, the criticisms that one may make about it, and the drawbacks which are mentioned. What are these drawbacks that others mention? Does the Islamic modest dress have the same drawbacks that are mentioned for the modest dress in general? Thus, the second discussion will be devoted to criticisms. The third area of discussion relates to the Islamic modest dress itself, its history, whether or not there was the modest dress during the age of ignorance in Arabia and Islam confirmed it, increased it, or decreased it. Or did it not exist in the age of ignorance and Islam established it? Then, what is the Islamic modest dress? Here, we will refer to the verses and commentaries upon the Holy Quran and traditions from the Holy Prophet and the pure Imams. The verses referred to are in two chapters, Surah An-Nur and Surah Al-Ahzab. The philosophical reason. Social commentators have often presented the reasons for the appearance of the modest dress centered around the idea that even in the first principles of nature, no covering or veil has been made to come between males and females. They say that there is no instance in nature where a curtain or veil appears between the male and female sex, or for the female sex to be set aside behind a curtain and to wear a covering. It would appear that there are 5 reasons given for the appearance of the modest dress. The philosophical reason centers on the tendency towards asceticism and struggling with pleasures in an effort to subdue the ego. The main source for this thought is perhaps India, where a barrier was created between men and women through the pursuance of asceticism, because a woman is the highest form of lustful pleasure-giving. If men were to mix freely with women, according to this idea, a man would mainly pursue this and his society would remain underdeveloped in other areas. Therefore, he had to struggle to conquer his own soul by denying it enjoyment of sexual pleasures. Other things which, like women, cause lust to arise within the human being are also struggled against, such as the resistance towards cleanliness or encouragement of messiness and filth. Do not think that some people chose this because of carelessness on their part, or because of recklessness or lack of concern. It was rooted in a philosophy which confirmed and even extended it. As Bertrand Russell mentions in his book Marriage and Ethics, in the early stages of Christianity, this kind of thinking developed through St. Paul, when celibacy was encouraged and moved a large number of people towards the wilderness to destroy Satan. Then he says that the church even rose in opposition to taking a bath because the body leads to sin. The church applauded uncleanliness, and a smelly body took on the smell of sanctity. According to St. Paul, cleanliness of the body opposed cleanliness of the spirit, and lice came to be considered as pearls of God. Then it occurred to me that having long hair among the faqirs who, as you know, practiced asceticism and remained celibate from women was for this very reason. They say that in the past, whether or not it is true, whosoever shortened or cut the hair of the body, that person's sexual instincts were strengthened. Thus, with this reasoning, long hair would lessen sexual desires. This idea existed in the past, and perhaps it is true that if a person were to cut or shorten or shave all the hair on one's body, one would increase one's sexual desires. Then the Indians and the Sikhs who forbid the cutting of their hair could have been for this very reason, because they were practicing asceticism. Some have said that the reason why the modest dress was found in the world in an absolute sense was because the idea of asceticism appeared. Then they ask why asceticism was found or began to develop among people. They have mentioned two reasons for this. First, because among the deprived class, there were people who carried on with women, had beloveds, and then their beloveds were taken away from them. A kind of hatred for women suddenly developed in them, in particular where women themselves conspired against them. Thus, a hatred developed against women. They essentially began to seek celibacy and asceticism, and would propagate to the extent possible against women. This they developed as a philosophy of the priests. The second reason given for the appearance of desire for asceticism is the opposite of the first. Persons who were very extreme in their sexual practices, an extent which even exceeded the limits of nature, and persons who turned to drugs or stimulators or things so that they were continuously stimulated in one way or another, would suddenly turn away from sex. It can be seen in human nature that sometimes when one does something to an extreme limit, one then turns completely away from it, even if it were something pleasurable. If something is imposed, a revulsion towards it can develop. At the end of their lives, they develop a hatred for sexual activity. History more or less confirms this in the lives of sultans who had spent their lives in carnal pleasures and harems. At the end of their lives, because of the extremity of their behavior, a hatred for it developed within them. They say it produced immense exhaustion within them and created a sense of antagonism and rivalry against women. At any rate, they say that the modest dress and the barrier between men and women was caused by the appearance of the idea of seeking asceticism. The materialists who wanted to justify asceticism and ascetic practices said that it was for one of these two reasons. As to these two reasons, we do not say that none of these existed in the world. They could have been, and these causes might have had these effects. But Islam, as we will mention later, established the modest dress. It did not exist during the age of ignorance in Arabia. We have to see whether or not these causes have been mentioned in Islam and have been given as proof, or other reasons have been given for it. Does this precept conform with other Islamic precepts? Does the Islamic spirit of asceticism conform with the concept of asceticism which we have mentioned? We will see that Islam has never presented this point of view, and, as a matter of fact, Islam has struggled greatly against this view. Even non-Muslims agree that Islam never promoted asceticism and ascetic practices. The concept that began among Hindus and extended to Christianity did not exist in Islam. It is clear that whatever Islam brought to the concept of the modest dress, this reason was not one of them. Islam has emphasized cleanliness. Rather than considering lice to be God's pearls, it said, cleanliness stems from faith. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, saw a person whose hair was disheveled, whose clothes were dirty, and he presented a bad appearance. The Prophet said, pleasure and taking advantage of God's blessings is part of religion. The Holy Prophet said, the worst servants of God are those who are dirty. Imam Ali alayhi salam, peace be upon him, said, God is beautiful and he loves beauty. Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam said, God is beautiful and he loves his creatures to embellish themselves and reflect their beauty. The reverse is also true. He considers poverty and pseudo-poverty to be enemies. If God has given you a blessing, the effect of that blessing must be shown in your life. They asked him, how should the blessing of God be shown? He said, by the clothes of a person being clean, smelling good, whitening their house with stucco, sweeping in front of their house, and lighting their lamps before sunset, which will add to its splendor of their home. In the oldest books we have available, such as Kafi, which has been used for 1,000 years, there is a section called Bab al-Ziya wa Tajammul. Here, Islam has strongly emphasized combing the hair, keeping it short, making use of perfumes, and oiling one's hair. In order to perform their worship better, and in order to gain greater spiritual pleasures, a group of companions of the Holy Prophet left their wives and children. They fasted during the day and performed worship at night. As soon as the Holy Prophet learned of this, he prevented them from continuing, saying, I, who am your leader, do not do this. I fast on some days, and on others I do not. I worship a part of the night, and I spend other parts of it with my wives. This group then asked the Prophet's permission to castrate themselves. The Holy Prophet did not give his permission. He said that this was forbidden in Islam. One day, 3 women went to the Prophet. They complained about their husbands. One said that her husband did not eat meat. Another said that her husband shunned perfume. The third said that her husband distanced himself from her. The Prophet of God suddenly became angry, threw down his cloak, left his house, and went to the mosque. He went upon the minbar and cried out, "What should be done with a group of my friends who put meat, perfume, and women aside? I myself eat meat, I smell perfume, and I receive pleasure from my wives. Whoever objects to my methods is not from among me." The command was given to shorten the length of dress, because the custom among the Arabs was to wear dresses which were so long that they swept the streets. Because of cleanliness, one of the first verses revealed to the Holy Prophet, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and thy garments keep free from stain. Chapter 74, verse 4. Also, the encouragement to wear white clothes is, first of all, because of beauty, and secondly, because of cleanliness. White clothes show off dirt sooner. This has been indicated in the traditions. When the Holy Prophet wanted to meet his companions, he would first look in a mirror, comb his hair, and check his appearance. He said, "God loves his servants who, when they are going to see their friends, make themselves ready and look nice." That is, wear white clothes because they are more beautiful and cleaner. The Holy Quran says that the creation of means of embellishment are among the kindnesses that God shows his creations, and it severely criticized those who deny themselves the beauties of this world. The Holy Quran says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, who has forbidden the beautiful gifts of God which he has produced for his servants, and the things clean and pure which he has provided for sustenance. Chapter 7, verse 32. Islamic traditions say that the pure Imams consistently debated with the Sufis, and in referring to this very verse of the Holy Quran, invalidated their deeds. The legitimate pleasures which spouses receive from each other are considered to be blessings in Islam, among the divine rewards. It is perhaps difficult for foreigners to understand this concept, and perhaps they reflect to themselves, how strange that they call this filthy act a blessing, a spiritual reward. It is surprising for a Hindu or a Christian to realize how much spiritual reward there is in performing the ritual bath, ghusl, after sexual intercourse, and washing away the sweat which has been created by this act. Islam has placed many limitations on the issues, but within the area that has been limited, not only does it not forbid it, but it encourages it, and it has even presented the kindness and compassion of women as being among the qualities upheld by God's prophets. There is a tradition which says, within the nature of the prophets is their love of women. The Holy Prophet straightway forbids the seeking of asceticism and ascetic practices at the beginning of Islam, practices which have been in imitation of monks. What a great encouragement that has been given to women. In the same way that they are encouraged to limit their contacts with men who are not their husbands, they are encouraged to adorn themselves for their husbands. A woman who does not do so is even cursed. a woman must make herself beautiful for her husband. At the same time, husbands are encouraged to cleanliness. Hassan ibn Jahm said, I went to see Musa ibn Ja'far, peace be upon him, and saw that he has used hair dye on his hair. I said, have you made use of henna? He said, yes. A man's use of henna and his dressing well increases the chastity of his wife. Some women lose their chastity because their husbands do not dress well for them. In another tradition of the Holy Prophet, one of the reasons he gives for Jewish women committing adultery was because their husbands were so filthy that their wives sought men who were clean and well groomed. Uthman ibn Maz'un was one of the recorders of the traditions of the Holy Prophet. He wanted to put this world aside in imitation of the monks and forbid himself from sexual pleasures. His wife went to the Holy Prophet and said, O Prophet of God, Uthman fasts every day and he gets up every night for prayer. The Holy Prophet became angry and went to him. Uthman was performing his ritual prayer. The Prophet waited until his ritual prayer had ended. He then said, O Uthman, God has not sent me to institute monasticism and asceticism. God has sent me to introduce the divine law, which is primordial and simple, and to tell people about the return to God. I perform my ritual prayers, I fast, and I also have relations with my wives. Whosoever loves religion, which coincides with my primordial nature, must follow what I do. Marriage is one of my customs. Clearly, this philosophy of asceticism cannot be attributed to Islam. This philosophy might have existed in some places in the world, but it does not conform to Islam.